Polio is a disease that has affected people throughout history. The disease attacks the nervous system and can cause varying degrees of paralysis. In the beginning of the 20th century, treatments were limited to quarantines and the infamous iron lung, a metal coffin-like contraption that aided respiration. Children, and especially infants, were the worst affected, but adults were also often afflicted, including President Franklin D. Roosevelt. In 1952, there were 58,000 cases reported in the United States and more than 3,000 died from the disease. On March 26, 1953, American medical researcher by the name of Dr. Jonas Salk announced on a national radio that he successfully tested a vaccine against the disease. Here is my grandmother's story of what she experienced during the epidemic and her time as a nurse. Why did you decide to become a nurse, and when did you go to nursing school, and where did you go to nursing school?
Okay, when I was a little girl, for ladies, the options were to be a teacher, or to be a secretary, or to be a nurse. And I had decided that I always wanted to be a nurse. And so I got out of high school when I was 16, and I worked in the Hudson Bay department store for 3 years because they wouldn't take anybody into nursing school until their 19th birthday. And I went to nursing school in Victoria, British Columbia at the Royal Jubilee Hospital. And when I was 19, and I graduated when I was 21. And so I always wanted to be a nurse, and I loved it. I came from a very poor preacher's family, and we had a very primitive living quarters. So when I moved to the hospital, it was like, I just thought it was wonderful. But most of my classmates didn't like it at all because they had, one of them was a senator's daughter and one was a doctor's daughter, and others were all levels in between. Most of them were not happy with the accommodations, but I thought it was so much better than I had before, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed all the friends I made. I graduated from with an RN in 1949, and I stayed at my home hospital for 1 year. And during that time, I worked in isolation, which is another word for communicable diseases. And so then I moved to several places on the way down the coast, ended up in Los Angeles at the huge Los Angeles General Hospital, County General Hospital, which was the second largest hospital in the United States. And it was awesome. I was thrilled. And I'd hoped to get a job working in surgery, but it was not to be because I wasn't a citizen, and the only ward that could hire non-citizens was the communicable diseases, which was experiences the polio epidemic at that time, and so they opened the restrictions to let non-citizens work there. So that's where I got the job, working with the polio ward.
Once you began to start working with people with polio, what did you do in the hospital?
Okay, I went to work. I worked 3 to 11 shift because I was in my heart. I was a tourist. I was a Canadian tourist to California, and if I worked afternoons 3 to 11, I could get up every morning and drive to the beach. I bought a secondhand Studebaker, my first car I ever had, and I drove to the beach every morning and made friends with lifeguards on the beach because there was nobody else. There were no tourists at 10 o'clock in the morning. And anyway, what was the question? What did I do? Well, I went to work at 3 o'clock, and I can tell you that every evening there were maybe 8 or 10 new patients roll in, and they were triaged in admitting downstairs. Triage means that sorting out, and they were sorted out as to the severity of their disease. And the most severe ones went up the elevator to the third floor where I worked, and every patient got a tracheotomy, which, is putting a tube into their trachea, and then went into a respirator, where a respirator would help them breathe because their breathing apparatus was paralyzed from polio. And so that's what I did. I worked with them. There's a lot of things to do, taking care of them, and especially feeding. Every patient had to be fed. Their arms were in the respirators. They couldn't feed themselves. And when you're feeding them, that's when you got to know them and try to cheer them up and try to have some kind of a camaraderie with them and make them feel a little better, because it was a terrible shock for them to all of a sudden be in a respirator. And with the little kids, it was a blow to them, but they adjusted so well. In a couple of days, they were laughing and making fun, and you wouldn't think that there was anything wrong with them.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you did for the people who were in the respirators, like what you had to do for them on the day-to-day basis?
Okay. The name Los Angeles County General Hospital was a dreaded name. People thought if you had to go to the county hospital, it was like the pits. But if you had communicable disease like polio, you were mandated. There was no place else in the city that you could go. You were mandated to go to the county general, and you would end up at CD building where I worked. And so you had to we had to overcome that stigma, and we were so careful to take such good care of our patients, so that every patient in a respirator got a bed bath, a complete bed bath. Now that you remember, this is all done through the portholes. And they got a complete bed bath. They got the complete clean sheets and linens, and then whatever else they needed, just through the portholes. And it's amazing how we took that in our stride. We had 2 or 3 respirators assigned to us every day, and we took care of those patients and made sure that they were comfortable and they were bathed and clean and as comfortable as possible. We're talking many, many years, and I look back and I don't know how I did it, but I don't ever remember thinking it was hard. I was so thrilled to be at the county hospital and to be scooting around on those little cars in the tunnels down below and meeting friends, making friends with other nurses and the other support services like x-ray techs and physiotherapists. And anyway, as far as the job, we just did it. Because when I worked at the Victoria Royal Jubilee Hospital, that was hard work too. It was really hard work, rolling patients over and changing their sheets every day. They didn't get a bath every day, but the polio patients did. And I don't remember. Maybe time has erased the misery part, but I just thought it was just a job, and I was a very happy person. I loved being there, and I loved meeting friends. I still have friends now that all these years are some of my friends from that era. And I don't know. I wish I could tell you what happened to the people in the respirators. All I know is that I went with some of them to Rancho Las Amigas to deliver them to the rehab center. But I don't believe anybody got out of those respirators alive, which is sad to say, but it was only a few years until the vaccine came out, and then the whole situation made an abrupt turn. Thank the Lord. I wouldn't change that experience for anything. That was an adventure of a lifetime. And then I went on from there when I married your grandfather, and I was a visiting nurse for a while, and that was pretty changing, working county hospital. And then several years later, I became a school nurse, and that was a wonderful experience too. And that's how I ended my career, being a school nurse in a very large high school in LA. And that was nothing like looking after polio patients, but it was an opportunity to do some good things for people.